question is this or is this the answer to my dilemma? Okay, this is the last part of essentially 3 videos before it, where I talked about the argument between buying the Fuji 70-300 and buying the Panasonic 70-200, and also then buying a 2x converter. If you look down here, you will see the stats on ISO, speed, and f-stop, and what millimeter the lens is set at. The Fuji just gives you the normal of the lens, doesn't compensate for the fact that it's APS-C. Over here, Panasonic actually will update it to show you that with the 2x converter, it is actually now a 400 millimeter lens, and it actually adjusts the f-stop as well. So the lens was set at f4, but with a 2x teleconverter, it becomes an f8. And again, this is ISO 3200 over here, ISO 1600. That makes sense because one is has to be a stop more to compensate. So if you look at it right away between these 2 images, you might sit there and have a preference for one or the other. I'll be honest, I think I like the Fuji better in ways, but I see pluses and minuses to each one. But that's mainly I'm looking at color. Now, they're in auto white balance. So again, this Panasonic, if I put it into fine weather, and which is its equivalent of daylight, an interesting way to put it, you can see now these are pretty comparable looking color-wise. Sure, this is now at a temperature of 5001 and a tint of 0.6. This one says 5500. Interesting differences. I'm sure if I dial these in, like let's go ahead and actually dial this one in to 5500, and now let's look at them and see how they compare. They're pretty similar now. So that is strictly just a difference in the cameras and how they're what they're choosing for auto white balance. Okay, so gotten through that. So if you see variations in color, don't get too caught up in it. You can adjust that. The other thing is, and I'm going to go to 100% on both of these, it's about equal. I have found that the Fuji, because the X-Trans sensor needs a little structure to get it up to par. So I'm going to throw in a little plus 18 here. I could, actually I threw it on the wrong one. So let's put this to 0. So let's give our extra 19 here to make it comparable. We can increase structure over here too, but you don't want to go too far, and I don't think inherently it needs it. It's just an X-Trans thing. Keep in mind the focus is not necessarily going to be on the exact same spot. You know, I'm shooting to get the eyes, but not always happen. So with that little adjustment to the Fuji, I think we are in the vicinity. I mean, this one looks a little sharper. Maybe we can toss just a little bit of clarity on the Panasonic, or not clarity, structure. I also notice, and we'll go out, that sometimes the Panasonic tends to look like it has a little more punch. So I would say do not be afraid to give this lens a little clarity. The other thing that has helped here is I had put this in Pro Negative High, which tends to up the contrast a little bit versus Pro Via Standard. Most of these lenses or most of these photos I'm going to have them in, it'll be in Pro Via Standard. I just happened to be playing with this one and put it into Pro Neg High and said, maybe Pro Neg High does this lens some good. So there you go. So for the most part, I think they are similar images. Again, I tried to do them one after the other. They look slightly different, especially if we go down here. He looks kind of messed up here. He ruffled himself up to make himself look nicer when I was switching to the Panasonic. So the fact that it looks like a little nicer in here is strictly down to grooming on the bird's part, so don't get too caught up in there. Does look nicer around his feet, but overall I'd say these images are quite similar. So let's go to another one. Again, we'll go all the way out. I, again, take them one after another so they are similar to each other, but they are not exactly the same. And from here, I can't see too much difference, so let's zoom in. Looking here, let's look at the top. Obviously, the bird left. Fuji's actually looking a little sharper on this one, probably where it got photographed. Either that or the 2 times isn't as sharp on the corners. So even without a clarity or structure variance here, I'd give this image, I'd say the Fuji one. But again, not huge differences. Okay, here we had something that was kind of standing still again. We have a different look, so let's go ahead and put these in their daylight so that they're a little more similar, not relying on auto white balance. I like the red over here better, but again, that's a minor issue. Looking at them right off, I don't see any clear winner. The Fuji is looking a little bit bigger. Again, this one is at 400. This one is at 289. If I grab my calculator, that 289 ends up being like 433 millimeters. So that's why we have a variance. Like I said, I tried to bring it down a little from 300 so that we were trying to compare 400 to 400, but didn't always get it. Looking at them close, I might even give this one to Panasonic, but again, I think it's just a focus issue. And for the most part, I'd say they were similar. And that's what I would say, don't get too caught up in it, because sometimes one may look the winner and sometimes others will. So I could have stacked this test with images that would have made you say one or the other was better. So I could have had it come out any way I wanted, but that's why I think it's important to look at several pictures. And again, when it comes down to sharpness, Fuji always seems to need that little like 20 structure, and as soon as you put that in there, it's right up there sharpness wise. Now it does appear a little less sharp, but I think that again, focus issue. So again, clear winner, not so much. Okay, so look at this. Maybe thinking this one looks a little sharper, but again, I need to come over here, give my Fuji its little boost. I think this is just something you have to do with Fuji files. Colors similar. I don't think there's anything. Again, with all these, they are more alike than they are different. So I couldn't claim there's a better. Okay, here's another image. So it's going to be a classic example of the moment and which one being better. When I zoom in, and now if we look at it from out here, I don't see a huge amount of difference in the look of these. We zoom in and we look at the head. He turned, he's in the sun, he's looking beautiful. Over here, not so much. Again, I think the Fuji needs that boost, and not necessarily the clarity, but clarity can do some nice stuff for the Fuji too. If we look in here, concentrate on his body. Again, this one's a little bit bigger because this is literally 300, so it's at 450. This one's at 400. Differences in color again. So let's go find weather and daylight. And who to say is more realistic there. I don't remember that well. But as far as sharpness and everything else goes, again, I think they're... It's hard to say, but they are similar enough in my book. And so here we go, another one. And we got Pelican. Didn't quite frame these the same. But let's go ahead and when we look at them at first, look pretty good. Give my Fuji its typical boost in structure. And then we'll go and look close. And again, turned his head like that other bird, so we're looking at different sides of the head. But again, very similar pictures down here. Obviously, you can see that this is a closer image because this is essentially 430 versus 400 millimeters. But the details in the feather, it's a little more blown out, but that could just take maybe a little highlight slider and play with clarity a little bit. Definitely a little more sun here. Again, I'm viewing these as being enough alike to not be a major issue. And we've got another guy. Again, turned his head, so they're not going to be identical pictures. But background, very similar. Again, before we zoom in, I'm going to give my Fuji its normal clarity boost, or structure boost, to get better sharpness out of it. But sharpness and everything, say there's similar highlight and shadow, not terribly different from each other. Again, I think this lens also gets a bonus from giving it a little clarity. Somewheres in there. Pretty much getting these pictures again to look pretty similar. Down here, see these background blur, of course, is similar, f5.6 versus f8. And again, down here at the bottom where it seemed a little, might have some focus issues. But for the most part, very similar. I'm not unhappy with either image. Let's go look at another one. Here we got a stork. Okay, these are pretty close to being similar images. Again, this one's a little bit bigger, a little more magnification. Okay, go over here and get my Fuji its needed structure. And let's go ahead and go in here at 100%. Put these heads next to each other. I might have to give it to the Fuji, but I think it's mainly that it was in focus better. Yeah, because we got better detail in the feathers. Try to give the Panasonic a little structure to get them equal. I might flat out give this one to the Fuji, and both of those could probably use some exposure. Actually, I saw I already had a little exposure bonus on the Fuji. Yeah, so again, more alike than not. Here we go. Sign again. This typical white balance variation. So let's put them both in the sunny. This one looks a little dark. So let's, whoops, wrong one. Let's go hit the Fuji and bring it up a little bit. And again, give that Fuji its little boost of structure. At this point, again, not world difference in each other. Now that they're both updated. 6 1/2 dozen of another, folks. And here we go again. White balance issue. So I'm going to go in here and go find weather on the Panasonic and daylight on the Fuji. So we're not confused by that. Still got a little more greenish yellow over here. For sake of argument, let's use the 5001 and 0.6 from the Fuji. And 0.6. And now they're, again, looking similar. Now let's go ahead and zoom in. And again, let's get more of the bird. In this case, for some reason, I think when I was putting the Fuji down, sometimes the lens would creep because of the weight of the camera on it. So, not exactly matching focal lengths. But even at that, again, similar pictures. I like the deeper red here. But again, nothing screaming to me. See this little faucet detail. A little more legible over here, even though it's smaller. But again, yeah, we're splitting hairs. Here's another one. Again, we got this issue with variances in white balance. Got some, maybe need to pull in some shadow detail here. So there, again, it looks pretty similar. Zoom in once they update. Again, the Fuji is looking a little bit bigger. It's looking a little sharper in here. Again, you know, this is where I said one picture you'll see, be willing to claim one as the winner. Another picture you'll look at it and you'll say the other one's the winner. Let them update. Okay. Oh, talking gets to me. Okay, so here we got another one. This is boring. We are like the Vatican of Scientology down here in Clearwater. They have a lot of businesses. And this one just happens to be near the Clearwater Marina. So looking at this one, again, from far away, it's similar. This one has a brighter look to it, and this is where I say clarity can help. And always give Fuji a little structure. This one's got, again, there is a difference in auto white balance. So I'm going to put them both to daylight. Don't know which one is more color accurate. Let's zoom in. For you to say again, I don't see a huge monstrous difference. Let's go to another image. This one's got some interesting stuff in it. Here we have the Panasonic and the Fuji, and this little boat that seems to always be moored out here. And this one's at 289, so that's like 430. And this one's at 400 millimeters. And looking at it like this, see they're similar. It's correct for auto white balance by putting them both into daylight. This one's a little blue, a little darker. Oh, this one's already got its clarity boosted up. So let me start it from 0. I did look at these. Okay, so there, when we first look at it, I think that's why this one needs little clarity to give it the same punch. So don't be afraid to give that clarity. You can see way in the distance somebody parasailing out here. We've got an osprey sitting on a light out there. And let's go ahead and go to 100%. These about equal, and variations in color, a little variation to the background. Not sure why that is, but otherwise, you know, where the focus was, which was on this boat, I am not seeing significant. I mean, there's little differences, but they're just not significant. You know, as much as I tried to make them the same picture, they can't be identical. And I think the back focusing versus forward focusing, this one looks nicer than that. And this looks nicer than that. I think it's a variation in where they focus. Now, what I said, that there was some interesting things about this one. If you look in here, these are both at 400 millimeter, and this is atmospheric haze is causing this. And that is a villain in the world of telephoto lenses, because you're not only dealing with how good all the optics are, but you know, the atmosphere. If it's a humid day, there's more water in the atmosphere, it's going to cause these kind of distortions, and they both are suffering from it. You know, neither one is immune. So again, two images that are, to me, more similar than different. Somebody had a nice jaguar out here. It's good to be rich. And basically, let me see, I did make some corrections to the Fuji, so let me go ahead and even these out, so you know what is pretty much the unadjusted. Okay, so there we go, unadjusted. Let me go ahead and put these in similar white balance. And to look at it this way, I would say there is definitely got more detail and more clearness up here. So I think we have to go into the Fuji. We need to bring in the shadows just a little bit. Could bring the highlights down over here, so I think it exposed a little bit higher. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I should. I was disappointed in the Fuji that its matrix metering was not doing a good job. A lot of times it was blowing out, so most of these images that I shot were shot with average metering, which was fine. And you know, all the images were not that far off, so it's not a big deal, but it is something that I discovered that I had to do, that I had to use average metering. Otherwise I was getting blown out highlights, and I didn't want to be sitting here trying to adjust the highlights on every image, or sit there and try to correct them by using the compensation dial. So I don't know. Every camera I've had, I've always left it in matrix metering, and then I have adjusted compensation because I kind of understood what the matrix metering's doing. I don't know why Fuji was making the decisions it did, but it was pissing me off. So I put it in average, and then it was fine. I would definitely, if I take this back down, you can see this is just not as crisp as this, and that's where I think if you, again, we give it that structure, and I think the Fuji just loves, this lens loves a little clarity. And then when you do that, and again, there's going to be variations in focus, but now they're looking good, both of them. Now the Fuji image is looking better than this one. But if I was to sit here and take some of these settings off, we see more of its natural state. But I think I'd give it to the, with my little corrections, give it to the Fuji lens. This is not quite as sharp as this is over here, but again, it's, you know, it's where the focus on each particular image. With this one, it's a little bit further and back. You can tell because this tree is sharper here, whereas this is sharper versus this. So then, that's down to individual focus and not so much the blame of either lens. Again, looking at them side by side, again, more similar than different. Okay. I tend to have a soft place in my heart for these little one-man sailboat. I want to run away from the world, I think. Get a little sailboat and screw everybody. Again, look at it. This one's looking, actually this one's looking though, the brighter image. But we'll deal with that more later. But otherwise, let's go. Here we go. Let's take a look at this. Zoom into this bell. Got no adjustments here, and thank God, give it to the Fuji. But otherwise, without getting in there and really pixel peeping, you know, this again, slight variations in focus. It's sharper up here, it looks, than this is here. I mean, this is sharper than this here. So it's just little variations in where the focus fell, as much as I tried to keep them the same. So there you go. Okay, here we go. Boring picture of a pigeon from here. Looking pretty similar. Obviously this one's a little more blown up. Again. Okay, this one's looking a little more focus here, but I think, yeah, it's just the difference. If we look here at the ground, we can kind of try to figure out where the focus was. So this focus was a little bit further back, probably right on his feet, and this one was probably a little forward. And that's all that difference is about. So again, no big deal. Okay, there you go. There were the images. For me, after looking at them, I think they were very similar, and I would be happy living with either one. Declaring a winner, what's my decision? What am I going to do? I'm going to keep the Fuji. I think it's just really compelling that the IQ was that close, and it is a cheaper, lighter, smaller lens, that it has the ability to take a 1.4 times extender and a 2 times, although I don't think I'd go 2 times, and that it actually has a focus limiter, which is very important on the lens, which the Panasonic 70-200 f4 does not. So for me, the Fuji is my declared winner. I would love to hear what you have to say, and put your comments down below. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. If you can, subscribe, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.